Why experience may be the biggest advantage in the AI economy. There's a quiet belief that tends to surface when people first hear about AI. It sounds something like this: I'm probably too late to this, or sometimes, this feels like a young person's game. Let's slow that down for a moment. Because that belief, while understandable, might be pointing you in the wrong direction. If you're in your 40s, 50s, or even early 60s, you've likely spent decades building something. Not just a career, but judgment, pattern recognition, and understanding of what works and what doesn't. And yet, when AI enters the conversation, it can feel like all of that gets reset. Like the playing field suddenly favors technical skill, speed, or familiarity with new tools. So let me ask you something directly. What if the opposite were true? What if, instead of being at a disadvantage, your experience was actually the most valuable asset? Think about that carefully. Because most people are approaching AI as a technical challenge. They're asking, how do I learn the tools? What can I automate? What can I generate? But what if the real opportunity isn't in the tools themselves, but in what you already know? Let's pause here. Because this changes the starting point completely. Instead of trying to catch up, you start by recognizing what you already have. And then you use AI to amplify it. When people talk about AI, the conversation tends to move very quickly. New tools, new platforms, new capabilities. And it creates a sense of urgency. A feeling that you need to move fast, just to keep up. Now let's slow this down. Because speed isn't always the advantage people think it is. Especially at this stage of life. If you've been working for 20 or 30 years, you've seen cycles. You've seen trends come and go. You've learned, often the hard way, that not everything that looks promising actually holds up over time. That perspective matters. But here's where many people get stuck. They assume that AI rewards only technical ability. That the people who succeed will be the ones who can move the fastest, or build the most complex systems. And while technical skill has value, it's not the whole picture. Let's think about it differently. AI is very good at producing output. Text, images, ideas. But output, by itself, doesn't create value. Value comes from relevance. From understanding what actually matters to a specific person, in a specific situation. And that's where experience becomes critical. Because experience helps you filter. It helps you recognize what's useful, and what's not. What's practical, and what's just noise. So instead of competing on speed, you're competing on clarity. And that's a very different game. So let's introduce a framework for thinking about this. I call it the experience amplification model, and it's built on a simple idea. Your past experience contains embedded value, not in a general sense, but in very specific, practical ways. Let's slow that down. Over the years, you've encountered problems. You've developed ways to solve them. You've learned what tends to work and what tends to fail. That knowledge is structured, even if it doesn't feel like it. Now here's where AI comes in. AI allows you to extract, organize, and distribute that knowledge more efficiently. It acts as an amplifier, not a replacement. So instead of asking, what can AI create for me, you ask, how can AI help me express what I already understand, more clearly, and more consistently? That's the shift. And here's why this framework works. Because it aligns with reality. It doesn't require you to become someone else. It builds on who you already are. Your experience becomes the foundation. AI becomes the tool. And together, they form a system that can create value. Let's walk through how this actually works, step by step. And we'll take this slowly. Because each part matters. The first step is identifying what I would call compressed experience. Think about areas of your life or career where you've developed clarity over time. Situations where something that once felt confusing now feels obvious to you. Let's pause here. Because this is often overlooked. What feels obvious to you is often valuable to someone else. So ask yourself, where do I have clarity that others are still trying to figure out? That's your starting point. Now step 2 is translating that experience into structured insight. This is where many people hesitate. They think, I'm not a teacher or I don't know how to explain this. Let's slow that down. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be clear. And this is where AI becomes useful. You can use it to help organize your thoughts, to turn rough ideas into structured explanations, to refine how you communicate. But notice what's happening. The source of value is still your experience. AI is helping you shape it. Now step 3 is choosing a consistent format for sharing. This could be simple. Short videos, written explanations, step-by-step guides. The format matters less than the consistency, because consistency builds familiarity, and familiarity builds trust. Let's slow that down again. You're not trying to reach everyone. You're trying to reach the right people, repeatedly. People who recognize the problem you're addressing. Now step 4 is building a simple system around that value. This is where it becomes practical. You're not just sharing ideas. You're creating a pathway. Someone discovers your content, they find it useful, and they have the option to go deeper. This could be through a guide, a template, a structured resource. The key is alignment. The deeper offer should connect directly to the problem you're solving. Now step 5 is using AI to maintain and expand the system. Let's slow this down. Once the system is in place, AI helps you sustain it. It reduces the time required to create content. It helps you repurpose what you've already made. It allows you to maintain consistency, even with limited time. And over time, that consistency compounds. Not just financially, but in terms of trust and credibility. Now step 6 is refinement. You observe what resonates. You improve clarity. You adjust your approach. But you don't start over. You build on what's already working. And that's where experience continues to play a role. Because it helps you make better decisions as the system evolves. Let's make this more concrete. Imagine someone named Daniel. He's 55. Spent most of his career managing inventory for small retail businesses. Now on the surface, that might not sound like something you'd associate with AI. But let's slow this down. Over the years, Daniel has developed a very practical understanding of inventory mistakes. Overordering, underordering, poor tracking systems. He knows where businesses struggle, because he's seen it repeatedly. So he applies the framework. He identifies his experience. He uses AI to help structure his insights. He creates simple, clear content explaining how small retailers can manage inventory more effectively. Nothing complex. Just practical guidance. Over time, a small audience forms. Business owners who recognize the problem. So Daniel creates a simple resource. An inventory tracking template and guide. Priced at $30. Now let's pause here. If he makes 30 sales per month, that's $900. Close to $1,000. And it's built entirely on experience he already had. I didn't create the value. It helped him deliver it. Now it's important to stay grounded. Because while experience is an advantage, it still needs to be applied. This isn't automatic. It requires effort. Time to think. Time to create. Time to refine. There will be moments where you question whether your experience is valuable enough. That's normal. Let's slow this down. Value is not determined by how impressive something sounds. It's determined by how useful it is, to the right person. So the process involves discovery. Testing different ways of expressing your experience. Observing what resonates. And gradually improving. This takes patience. But it also builds something more stable. So why might experience be the biggest advantage in the AI economy? Because while tools can generate output, they can't replace lived understanding. Let's slow that down one last time. AI can help you create faster, but it can't decide what actually matters. That comes from you, from your experience, from your ability to recognize what's useful and what's not. So instead of seeing yourself as behind, you might begin to see yourself as prepared. Prepared to use these tools in a way that's grounded, structured, focused on real value. So the question isn't, can I keep up with AI? A better question might be, how can I use AI to express what I already know in a way that helps someone else? Because that's where the opportunity is, not in starting over, but in building forward from where you already are.